So one thing that came up in your book that we didn't actually talk about in class was the idea of circular linked lists. So this is sort of an expansion on linked lists in general, and they come in handy every so often, but they're mostly just sort of cute, right? So we know that a linked list consists of objects, which we call nodes, and they point from one object to the next. These instances contain a pointer to an instance of the same type. And each of these nodes contains some information that we usually call a payload, right? So this is used in many cases where we might not know the size of an array ahead of time. We can use a linked list because it dynamically expands to fit the data that we have. So circular linked lists add an extra property that we don't normally have in a linked list. So normally a linked list ends with a null pointer, right? So we have our front pointer and it keeps going, and you go until you reach the null pointer. And that tells you where the end of the linked list is. But what if instead we pointed to the front of the list that has now somehow disappeared? What if instead of pointing to null, it pointed back to the front? So we have something like this, right? Where you keep going, you're traversing the list, and all of a sudden you end up back where you started. And this is going to become very annoying if it does this for everything, right? But if you're traversing the list, your temp pointer is moving along, and all of a sudden you end up back where you started, right? And you can keep going, and you go in circles over and over and over again. So why would that be useful, right? Why would we ever want to actually do this? Well, so it's kind of useful in situations where you need to constantly repeat something. So a good example of this is keeping track of the current hour of the day. Say you're writing some program that's logging something and it needs to keep track of the hour, right? You could update it, and you could use, obviously this is maybe months of the year would be a better example, but obviously you could do, I equals I plus 1 mod 12, right? Plus or minus something, right? Would give you the hour of the day or the next hour. But you could also just move this pointer 1 to the thing, right? And when you get to 12, the next hour is 1, right? That's how a circular linked list would work. There's situations where this is useful. Like I said, months of the year, hours of the day, minutes of the hour, seconds of the minute, right? Like, it's going to keep cycling through the same information. You don't necessarily have a front anymore, right? You just have your current. And if you're traversing, right, if you wanted to print out all of the hours starting with your current one, you would have some temp pointer that you keep moving until it matches your current again, right? And once you match the current for a second time, you've printed everything else in the list. So circular linked lists are kind of fun to use in situations where you need them, but they can get a little confusing if you're not expecting a circular linked list, because sometimes they can lead to infinite loops. So if you do use circular linked lists, make sure that you know you're using circular linked lists and you're not looking for a null pointer, right?